Hey everyone, so this is going to be the first of the tutorials for the Project 1 Rhino setup. So this is for our digital models that we need part of Project 1. You can see the prompt in our shared folder, and it has a little bit more information about what's required for the next class. In total, we need 6 digital models in Rhino. So just read this over on your downtime, and we're gonna start the tutorial. So first things first, be sure to open up Rhino on your computer. I'm working on a Windows PC. I know a lot of you are working on Macs. It's very similar. Just be sure to set it to work in inches since our requirements are 4 by 4 by 4 boxes. So once we first open Rhino, I do want to make sure that we're all working in the right units. So just type in units. You do not need to click in the command bar as we discussed in class. This is strictly just type into the keyboard and the software will automatically know what to do. So you see the basic defaults are inches and they go to decimal display. I prefer feet and inches just because we work with fractions all the time. It doesn't mean that you can't enter decimals for inches and, and feet, but this is just the way I like to work. Okay, so now what we need to do is file save as. So I clicked file at the top left corner. And now I'm just going to save this in my designated folder. So everyone's going to have their own folder, location. And so you just save it, wherever you feel comfortable. So I'm going to make a new folder here for tutorials. And yep, you can create folders in your computer to your heart's content. I'm just going to name this Keaton tutorial for right now, just so I have a file saved. Later on, when you're uploading these 3D models for me to review for grading, you will follow the file naming protocol that is available in the syllabus. So if you scroll all the way down, you will see right here, file naming. And yeah, so again, just go back to the shared folder, check out the syllabus, make sure that you have everything accounted for. So I'm going to start in my top view, just like we did in class, and I'm going to give myself the generic boundaries. So I'm going to draw a polyline first. This is one of the 3 options, and I'm going to just type in 4 inches in all directions. Click 4 inches, click, and then I'm going to type in closed curve, just to make sure I have a closed curve. What you can also do is type in a rectangle tool. So again, you see I just typed REC, and the program already knew that I was trying to draw a rectangle. So I click my starting point. You'll see that it prompts me what to do in this top left corner. In my command box, everyone's command, can be in a different location. You can always drag this. I like it at the top. And again, I'm starting my first corner point. Then I'm going to type in 4 and type in 4, and that automatically generates a closed curve. Typing in rectangle is probably the faster way to do it, but entirely up to you. So what I did was I just copied one of these boxes over to the right. The way I did that was clicking on the curve, and then I have this gumball tool pop up, and I directed it with the gumball, and holding down Alt, it makes a duplicate. Now, if you do not have gumball visible, you could just type gumball in the computer and make sure that it is O for on. You could also turn it off if you don't want it. But I prefer to have the gumball tool just because it makes moving these, moving our shapes and massings so much easier. All right, so I don't have a model here to reference right now, so I'm just going to draw a few basic plan views. Again, you all should have 3 physical models that you're referencing for this first part of the assignment. And these are the 3 models that you just uploaded to the drive. So I'm just making some arbitrary shapes. When you're typing these, it's going to be more exact, so I recommend using a polyline. If you know that one side of your model is 0.5 inches, which is a 1/2 inch. You can type in 0.5, you can type in 1/2 for a 1/2 inch fraction. And then if this extends 3 inches, I just type 3 inches, click, again 0.5, click down, and I close it off. I like to make sure that I have a closed object, and you can see that over here on your properties toolbar where it says if it's a closed curve. Now, if I am drawing just a regular polyline like this, and I bring it very close, but I don't touch, it will say open curve. We only want to work with closed curves for this. All right, so I'm going to get rid of that shape. I was able to do that by dragging a window over that curve and just pressing delete on my keyboard. All right, so now I want to move this shape that I just made into my boundary. So I'm going to type in move, and I'm going to pick one control point, and it makes it easier if you have your O snaps on. I have my O snaps shown on my screen. If you don't see your O snaps, these are just the gripping tools that we use when controlling our shapes. You can type in O snap, OSNAP, and you can choose from the command options what you want to show. I have endpoints, near, points, midpoints, intersection, perpendicular, all on. Okay. You can turn them on and off as you please. I like these settings, but as you become more familiar with the program, you will have your own preferences. All right, so let me make one more object in here. I'm gonna move this aside. Again, I can move it with the gumball tool if I wanted to, but I'm just making this a little bit more exacting. I'm gonna make one more rectangle. If I had this rectangle at I'll make it 3.5 inches. And then the height, I'll make 1.5 inches. Oh, and I forgot to click it, so just bear with me. Always make sure that you click down first. This way it locks in the dimensions that you entered, okay? So we can do that again, rectangle, first corner of rectangle right here. Other corner length, I'm gonna do 3.5 inches. Click down, and then enter your additional length. Okay, I know some of you struggled with that in class, but you will get the hang of it in no time. Again, we can do this with the polyline tool. Same as before. It's a little bit more exacting. And I'm just going to type in close curve just to make sure that my two endpoints meet. Okay, so you see I am out of this boundary. And what we might want to do just to keep us a little bit more in check is we can change the layers of these boundaries. So I will change it to layer 1. You can toggle between your layers just like this in this right-hand side. And what I'm going to do is rename this layer just as boundary for reference. All right, so now we see that that has changed to red to reflect the change in the layer. So now I'm going to move this rectangle back into the boundary, and I would like to shift both of these up 1 inch. All right, this time I used the gumball tool instead of the move tool, and that seemed to work out well for me. Okay, so I'm gonna make a few more rectangles just to get this assignment moving along. And I'm gonna move this up 0.5. And over here, I am just going to make this a little, I'm trying to make it a little different. All of your models by now should be distinctive and have different concepts. I know some of you have, you know what, I'm gonna do something that punches through because I know a few of you have shapes that have holes in the middle of them. So I'm just gonna draw a rectangle and I'll offset it. I'll offset it a 1/2 inch inward. So it's created this inward shape. And then I'm going to have one more rectangle just cutting through that entirely. Okay, so now I have my 3 plan views. And so this is very similar to the hand drawing assignment that's due at our next visual studies class, the top view of that. Okay, so now what I want to do is extrude these curves in perspective. So I clicked on the tab that says top, double click it, and then I see the 4 quadrants, and then I double click into perspective. If you want to see everything that's within your model, you can type in Z for zoom, or just type in zoom and then E for extents. Right, and this shows everything that's in the model. If for some reason you end up drawing a rectangle very far away, what you can do is move this rectangle, click a point, and move it to 0, 0. This way it's the origin point. Okay? So I know some of you ran into that earlier today. So this is just one way around that. All right, so now I'm going to start extruding my shapes. Before I do that, I do want to change this to be in a shaded view. This way it becomes a little bit clearer to see what the solid masses are. And I'm going to extrude curve. Okay. Now you see right now it's going in both directions and it's also not a solid object. So I'm going to change that by following these prompts at the command bar. So I'm going to type B for both sides because I don't want both sides to be on anymore. And I'm going to press S for solids because I need it to change from no solids to solids. All right, and that now I'm just picking my distance. This block I will make 2 inches tall. This one I will make 3 inches tall. And this one here I will make 0.5 inches tall. So 0.5 is a half inch. You know, if it's a 1/4 inch, then it's 0.25. If it's an 1/8 of an inch, it's then it's it's 0.125. Just know that none of your massings should be less than an 1/8 of an inch. It's just if you had some distances between that you would focus on that. All right, so now I'm going to start elevating this. I need to bring this one up. Maybe I'll go up another half inch. And now I have 3 massings. I have this nice cantilever and so on. 3 unique massings. All right, if I were to, if I wanted to check the height of this, I could type in bounding box in the command bar, and I'm just going to press enter, and then I will check the distance, and the overall height of this full model is 3 inches. Okay, so now I could delete that bounding box because I no longer need it, and I'll move on to the next model. So this one I will extrude curve again. It's going to follow 4 inches. Most of the settings stay the same from the previous commands. So because I changed this to be, you know, a solid and going one direction, it's going to follow that along until I change my intentions. So if I want this to be extruded 3 inches, I just type in 3 inches. And then for this last model, I'm going to extrude curve. Make sure you type extrude curve because there's a different type of extrude that we're not going to be using for this. All right, so 0.5 is what I want to do, and then I'm going to lift this up 1 inch. All right, so we see that both of these models are connected with this one centralized piece, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, so extrude curve. Now, Rhino is super intelligent, so even if you make a typo, it usually can figure out what you're trying to say. So it'll give you options in the command bar. So just keep a lookout for that. So I'm going to extrude this 4 inches. And then, actually, no, I don't want to extrude that 4 inches. I want to start over here. Extrude curve. I'm going to extrude this one 1 inch. If I, you know, now I don't see that curve that I had in the middle, so I'm just drawing a window over it. Make sure you select everything, just, you know, make sure you try to draw a window that selects that whole shape. And then I'm going to extrude this curve 2 inches, opposite direction. I'm just pointing my mouse in the direction that I want it to offset or that I want it to extrude. And now I'm going to lift this model 0.5 inches. Now I'm going to cut this one, or I'm going to extrude this curve a 1/4 inch, so 0.25. And then I will just lift this up 1 inch. And now I have all these pieces just tucked within each other. Okay, so these are, as pretend these are my 3 physical models that I've already modeled out of the rigid foam from the first part of the section. And I'm just going to make a little copy of it. Again, I made that copy using my gumball tool. I held down the Alt key, and then I dragged the green arrow in the direction that I wanted to move in. Another way that you could do this copy and paste is by physically typing in copy, grabbing your start point, and then moving it to your end point, your desired goal. Okay. So now I want to pick my favorite model that I'm going to make, different versions of. Okay. So this is going to be the model that I choose. And so again, I just copied it using the gumball tool. I can copy it this way to make it work for you all, to just show the 3 different steps. And what I'm going to do for these 3 different versions is reconfigure these shapes a little bit. So, it's slightly different from the original model, but it's following the same concept. So here I might want to shrink this guy. Same with this model. If I only want to shrink it in one direction, I use the command scale 1D, and I pick my start point, my second reference point, and then I type in the height that I want it to be. If I only want this to be 1 inches tall, I type in 1, and then it reduces it to 1 inch. You can check this by typing in distance. Click 1 point, click second point, and that'll tell me in my command bar that it was 1 inch. Okay. So now what I need to do is drop this shape so that it intersects. So let me move and bring it down just like that. And so you see when I moved it down, because I have my O snaps on, it tells me when I make this intersection. You see it says end, comma, INT. So that's a direct reference to the O snap rules. So now this object, I think I'm going to scale it 1D as well. And I will just bring it to the base of this 1 point. Okay, so you choose reference points, reference tools. I have no idea if this model will be able to stand in this way because, it's not a physical model yet. So it could be that these 2 pieces weigh it down. And if that is the case, maybe what I do is I rotate this object 3D. And so what I'm going to do is rotate it along the vertical axis. So I pick my axis rotation. And so if I want to rotate along this spline, I click my start point, end point, and then the direction that I'm planning on rotating. So if I want this rotated, a full 90 degrees, that works. And then I'm just going to shift it back into the boundary. Okay. So that was rotate 3D. So this third model, what I'm going to do is shrink this one. So I'll scale this 1D, start point, end point, bring it to the edge of this one model. And so I'm using this model as my reference point. And this one I might scale 1D in the opposite direction to let it favor this side. And maybe I'll scale it in the opposite direction so that it intersects this piece. Okay. So now I have 3 distinctive models, and they were all inspired by my initial physical model. And now we're going to move on to actually cutting the models. So this one I'm just going to copy and paste. I typed in copy, and now I'm just choosing the area that I want to paste it. So just keep in mind that I am intentionally keeping duplicates, just so that we can go back to this, if anything, and make some further modifications. So this is a great way to see the evolution of our models and our designs. And it also helps us back it up if, something were to go wrong. Speaking of, I'm just going to do a quick control save, just in case I I type in a command that requires too much energy from my computer and causes it to crash. If it causes it to crash, usually there's a recovery file that we could resurrect the work from. But it's very, sorry, it's very important to do these frequent saves. All right, so I am going to, just because I know that these are the models I'm working with, I'm going to lock the layer of that boundary, and I'm going to change the layer of some of these objects that I'm leaving alone as is without trimming. So I'm just right-clicking from the Layers tools. Again, you're probably in Properties, change it over to the Layers tab, right-click, and change Object Layer. All right, so now the objects that I'm not going to trim are purple. So these are original, okay? And then the remaining objects that are still in the default layer, those are going to be trimmed. All right, so we started going over this in class, what the Boolean trim or the Boolean split tool does, and it's basically just cutting out some of these intersections. So for this first model, I'm going to cut from this base. This is my dominant form, so it just seems to make sense. So I'm typing in Boolean split. All right, so this is the object I'm splitting, and this is my cutting tool, and that's my cutting tool. So now, just for reference, you can leave it alone, but we see that I truly cut through this one dominant piece. All right, so it's a perfect outline of this model, and I don't need it, so I'm going to delete it. I just wanted you to be able to see it. So if I went into a ghosted view in my display settings, you can see that there are additional lines. We're seeing through this as if it's an X-ray. So we see the massing puncturing the base model, or the most dominant massing. And yeah, so I'm going to go back to shaded view. Just keep in mind that each of these views you can work in, but it's a lot more demanding on your computer. So I recommend just sticking between shaded and wireframe. But as you get stronger computers later on, you can try out other things. So the two pieces here and here are what I want to trim this next time around. So I'm going to type in Boolean split again. And so I want to cut this one and that one. Okay, so I selected the two objects that I want to cut. This center one here is going to be my cutting tool. Right click, and now I see that this object was cut and this object was cut. So if I were to pull this box out, it would make way for this box and that box. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated because I cut at a corner, but I don't think any of your models have that, so I'm not too worried. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to do one final Boolean split. And so I'm cutting this object. I'm going to use this cutting tool, and now I have this object right here with a pure opening. Okay. Now I'm going to cut both of these tools with this one intersecting object. So now we see that this object is cut. Control Z for undo that. This object is cut, and we're going to do Control Z, put it back in place. And this one is its full form, no cuts. All right. So now we're going to go on to our Boolean split tool at this, at these, variations. So Boolean split, and it's going to be cut by both of these objects. And same thing here, I'm going to cut this one base with both of these cuts here. And last one, Boolean split, I'm going to cut this object and that object. You see they're selected in yellow with this, undo that. Sorry. Type that in again, Boolean split. this surface or this object and this object both are going to be cut by this centerpiece. Okay, so we see a full cut here, we see a full cut there, and we're good to go. Okay, so we no longer need this little center box just because that's our split. And so I'm grabbing my final cuts and I am moving them down. Oh, let me unlock my boundary so that I could copy this as well. So copying this, hold down Shift to select multiple objects at once. And I'm going to copy and I will paste it right here. All right. So it looks like I actually still need to cut this one piece. So let's go back to that. You'll notice this as you're working. You know, it's very easy to miss things. You know, as long as we get back to it and get it resolved. So now I'm going to split this shape with this object and that object. Up. And tolerance is too complicated, so that cannot work. So that's fine. What I will do instead is scale this 1D. I will just reduce this object. Oh, it seems like it worked anyways. Yeah, it just cut it into 4 parts, which is not what we want to do. So if that happens to you, just reach out to me and we'll get it resolved, or you can just modify your design. Just so that, you know, it has to be the 3 pieces, not 4 pieces. But just for this demonstration, I'll leave it alone as it is. Everything else seems to be okay. All right, so again, I'm going to copy these models. Section by section, just to make sure that, you know, only the pieces that I want are copied over. So you can do them all if you'd like, all at once. I would not use a window because remember, the trim pieces are still going to be there. Just because you can use Boolean difference if you want to avoid those trim pieces. But I think that it's nice to see the, you know, the objects that we cut out. So that's personal preference. You know, you might not agree, and that's okay. But I think it's nice to see what was trimmed like this. Okay. So now I'm going to go back over here and do the same thing. I'm not going to draw the full window. I'm going to click my boundary boxes, and just click the objects that, you know, are the final objects, not the sum of what was cut, or not the difference of what was cut. Okay, so copy, start point, end point, and now I have these assignments. So just to clean things up, what I would like to do is just make these all in a nice clean grid. So I'm going to draw a polyline to guide myself, and I'm going to draw, if I know that I have 6 objects and, you know, they're 4 each, I'm just going to make a bunch of 4-inch intervals so that I know how to space it, where I'll go 4 inches and then 2 inch and then another 4. And so this is just acting as my guideline. And I'm going to copy this 4 inches, and then I will offset that 2 inches, and then I will copy that again 4 inches. So again, I'm using the gumball tool and the Alt key on my keyboard to get this done. So now that I know that I don't have any of the straggling pieces, what I'm going to do is copy each of my objects into place. Okay, again, I'm using my 2-inch gap between the models. Oh, I made an accidental copy. And same here, I'm going to copy this whole section, copy 1. I'm looking for my snap. You see the end popped up. Okay. So these are the 6 models that we need for class. All right, now if you want to start exploring the idea of annotating these models, you could just get into a new layer, double click it to rename, and you can type in dim for dimensions. So now that I know that I'm in this layer, I double clicked into it and you'll see that that's the only one that's bolded. I'm going to type dimension. So my first dimension point is going to be here, second one there, and I can see that that is 4 inches. Now, I think that that's a very clunky dimension style. So what you can do is change it in your settings and linear dimension. It's right now it's default. I'm going to change it maybe to inch fractional, and I can change the overall height of these objects. So 0.025, 0.025. Okay, my units are a little wonky. I think maybe it was better by 0.125. No. Anyways, you're gonna keep playing with this until you're content. And then remember to change the arrow sizes. And you could always just edit the whole style from here. So you do not have to get into this. This might be a little too complicated. So just obviously focus on your modeling for right now. Okay. And you can play around with that later. But basically, this is how we want to turn these drawings into, these 3D models into drawings. I mean, so yes, if you have any additional questions, please reach out. We can, if it's a good question that I think everyone will benefit from, I can do another tutorial to solve specific issues, or it might be something simple as an email response. But let me know, send me an email, and do not forget to upload your 3D model to your student folder before class on Tuesday. All right. Thank you so much.